For our next talk, I'd like to welcome Peter Russell. Peter is a Director of Better Biosecurity Solutions Limited, which is a specialist biosecurity strategy and planning consultancy. Peter's talk is on-farm biosecurity. It's never too late to integrate.
Thanks, Darren. Darren and I go back to the good old days, which my kids tell me started anything before 1998 was the old days. So look, I've got two jobs. First of all, I've got a weekday job as a biosecurity consultant doing strategy planning work and authorised persons training, anything to do with biosecurity. In my weekend job, I've got a new challenge. So Araha Cambridge is so very new that no one here will have heard of it, and you can't search it up yet. But it's a project that's morphed out of Predator-Free Cambridge, which I've been convening for the last few years. And we really want to take a more of an integrated approach to managing what we have in and around Cambridge. So we're inherently lazy in Cambridge. We want the birds to come to us, and they are from Mangatotri. So we're now got kaka and kariaria flying down our main streets in Cambridge. So we want to encourage that some more, and we've set up this project which is really taking that all of it environmental approach to managing what we've got around Cambridge and building on that magnificent resource we have in Mangatotri. So a bit about what we do. So we've got 35 odd clients throughout the country, do a lot of work with all the regional councils, a lot of Crown departments. We've done some awesome projects recently with wilding conifer control and doing some work for Craig and the Horizons here. And we've got some current projects working on bird flu and finding out where all the knotweed's gone from the Tasman floods. Hopefully it's all gone out into the Tasman Bay, but we're not quite sure about that. But one thing I really want to do, and we haven't really had the chance to get into this too much, is work closer with farmers and catchment groups and really start to close that gap between biosecurity management and catchment management, because it's all connected, right? So here's the proposition. In all my tripping around the country, there's always constant talk of embracing this integrated catchment management. But to be honest, I don't see an awful lot of that happening. There's still a lot of silo stuff happening. And from my point of view, I guess biosecurity is often seen as the poor cousin and doesn't really get mentioned as much as it probably should. And it's not really until diseases hit, M. bovis, velvet leaf, pathogens arrive that farmers start to sit up and take notice of what's happening in their area. And a lot of the time they see it as someone else's deal. And I just, an example there is the Te Ako community group west of Hamilton. They were quite badly hit with M. bovis. And they readily admit now that 2 years on, things have kind of returned to normal. The disease has been beaten, and they've kind of lost sight and gone back to how they used to work before. But look, it's all relative. They've been struggling with wellness issues in their community. So it's all put in perspective, I guess. But that's the proposition: is we should be doing more to front foot biosecurity, integrating with catchment management. So look, I'll quickly go over Biosecurity 101, just a bit of context. You guys should know all this. I'll talk briefly about the 7 components on what good on-farm biosecurity looks like, and got some good case studies, one from the Horizons here and one from in the Waikato region. I guess that the call to question or call to arms for you guys is how you can help in your day-to-day management of what integrated catchment management with biosecurity looks like. So Bio 101, Biosecurity Act guides everything to do with pest management in New Zealand. It's got 3 main purposes you can see there. Broad range of values being protected, and our dear old friend alligator weed pops up and all those things. It's a major agriculture, environmental and human animal health impact. And what I love about the Biosecurity Act, it's got some pretty cool powers, and I don't think regional councils probably use those as much as they should. It's quite a unique piece of legislation when you start to look at it. There's a bit of philosophy involved in biosecurity, so the underlying principle that all pest control is a landowner's responsibility. You will never see that written into the legislation anywhere, but that's one of the underlying aspects of it. And the whole point of it was designed to cover all land tenures. You'll hear the terms exacerbators and beneficiaries tossed around as well. That's some of the biosecurity parlance used. But one thing I really like about the BSA, it means that MPI and regional councils must provide either national direction in biosecurity or regional. So it's not voluntary, oh, we'll do it if we've got time or if it's a good thing. By law, it says these organisations must provide leadership. And by and large, they do, and it's been a great outcome. So one of the ways that regional councils manage biosecurity is through regional pest management plans, as you know. Generally, pests are grouped into those three: production, environmental, public threat pests, and it means you can develop plans relevant or specific to each region. And it gives a clear mandate for councils to be involved in things like low incidence, high threat pests. So why contemplate on-farm biosecurity? Well, look, RPMP compliance is just one factor. It just makes frigging good sense. Why wouldn't you want to constantly profile risks to your farm of anyone coming on to your property and your business? It's just a no-brainer. I'm constantly amazed how apathetic a lot of farmers are, or blasé, to what is and who's coming onto their property. Really, it's another risk management tool like health and safety. People do that. Why isn't biosecurity treated in the same way? It certainly helps build overall resilience in your business. And there's also marketing levers, getting premium prices for your products as well. So the message from me is farmers do need to be more proactive. The best protection against pests and diseases is developing, just some sound practices and good routines that are applied consistently. You don't have to, boil the ocean on all this stuff. And I really see regional councils are probably in the best place to organise and lead this type of response. I mean, you guys are all pretty tapped out doing your day-to-day work, but I see this, on-farm, working with farmers about their whole of biosecurity approach as a really important step that needs to be taken. So very quickly looking at the different components of biosecurity. You jump online and you'll see all sorts of planning documents around. MPI have a really good one. Beef and lamb have their own one. The dairy industry have their own one. There's lots out there, but it's a matter of getting them used and promoted and out there. Like I said, it doesn't have to be difficult. The focus generally is on those inputs from 2 to 5. That's where the sort of key focus has been on through those industry-led plans. So I'll touch on those one by one. So the first one is just understanding what's happening in your local area, that intelligence gathering. A bit like the stuff Didymo Dave, he talks about having that biosecurity intelligence. So in relation to question one, I'd imagine this is something that most cockies just intuitively do. They're out there looking around, but they could be better organised, and there are a lot of simple things they can put into practice that aren't too onerous, like signage, doing inductions on people coming onto their farm, having specific places they can and can't go onto. And how much time is actively spent working on-farm biosecurity needs. I test a lot of stuff that I talk about with my brother-in-law, who's a dairy farmer, Mata way. And they get the principle. They see biosecurity planning as just another bit of paperwork like health and safety, and to be honest, they're a bit over that. So that's definitely one of the key challenges. Yeah, and point 3, testing people's overall knowledge of pest management and issues. A lot of people do not really know. Ones that I come across never heard of pest management plans, but they sure take an interest when new stuff like velvet leaf comes and lands in their backyard. Farm input. So, farmers should always be aware of what's coming onto their property, whether it's animals or stock feed or compost or beehives. There's any amount of biosecurity risks coming on a day-to-day basis. And one classic example I recall, when there's a drought in the Waikato. We had 2 droughts year on year, and farmers were importing hay from Northland. And eagle-eyed Heidi from Waikato. Why isn't Heidi here? Heidi's always at NETS conferences. Heidi took this photo of when the baling wrap was pulled off, there was alligator weed oozing out. So this happened on 2 occasions, and once Heidi turned the truck around and sent it back to Northland where it came from. And I think in this situation, this was another year, the bales that had alligator weed, they were put on site, the cows ate them, and they made sure every bit of scrap of feed was eaten before it could spread anywhere. So look, it's just one of those things. You've got to be really wary of what's coming on your property, and even from out of regions as well. So farmers have obligations too. Local and regional biosecurity doesn't stop. With that, people exporting animals and product off farm need to make sure they're not shifting the problem on somewhere else. Just that pathway management, I really believe pathway management is going to become a real... I'm surprised there actually isn't more of a thing, people developing pathway plans. That's mostly how our pests and weeds spread, is through pathways. And of course, people make great vectors. So you're moving around from property to property. Farmers can have, or people working in the farm rural sector can move around 4 or 5 properties a day. So just, having simple things in place like knowing where to park vehicles, no-go areas, and just limited access to livestock. And simple things like we did over COVID, hand washing and just cleaning stations provided. Most cockies would not have thought of that. It's like the typical bell curve. You've got the few early adopters who will do their stuff, some who won't never care, and you've got the big number in the middle who probably fit into that blasé area. And of course, vehicles and machinery, there's probably been a lot of work. Most work's been done on this, the machinery hygiene, just making sure you're not tracking stuff around from property to property with sharing of equipment, harvesters, things like that. Fragments of vegetation can easily be hidden, and especially in tracked vehicles. So alligator weed, that's dynamite for being shifted, just one tiny fraction moved around. That's pretty much how all the Waikato alligator weed has been spread around the place through machinery and lack of hygiene, just unaware of how that happens. They sure become aware of it when you slap a restricted place notice on them and they can't move their vehicles. And awareness among staff. So, people who are most closely involved with the farming operation are most likely to notice potential problems as they emerge. So once again, it's not difficult stuff, but just keeping records of where products and things are being purchased so you can enable that trace back and trace forward of where stuff happens and where it all goes to. So staff engagement, contractor engagement is super important. And then, of course, it's actually undertaking the work. So pest plants and animals can really impact on your bottom line, or farmers especially. We've got countless examples of that. Again, a lot of farmers I come across, they might be camped out under a woolly nightshade tree and not even have any idea what it is or care. So, I guess we've all got a role to get more educated in that area and talk to your neighbours. And again, regional council staff, I reckon, are key in this whole factor. So farmers can do self-assessment. So I've done this on a few examples. We've got a questionnaire we developed up that farmers can go through and do the self-assessment. So again, why wouldn't you want to constantly profile the risks of biosecurity risk to your property and business? It's just nuts not to. So next step is to, once they've done their assessment, is to write a bit of a plan, and it needs to address things that you can do immediately versus things that are long term. Just practical action-based plan with few key actions is what's needed. So what's all this got to do with integrated catchment management? I guess the main thing is pest animal control is the obvious one. Keeping leaves on trees and trees in the ground, that's a pretty fundamental response to what catchment management looks like. The land use capability assessments, if you're working under those units, biosecurity has strong connections to surveillance of planted tree health and soil and crop health as well. Riparian plantings, I always recall the catchment management schemes when they set up first at Waikato Regional Council. There's a lot of work on fencing off and planting margins of waterways, but there's little or no thought given to creating habitat, and then pest control kind of didn't really happen. eDNA is now also a valuable tool to identify potential pests present. And I guess my key message here is, if you don't monitor it, you can't manage it. So I've got some case studies to talk about here. The first one is the Rangatiki River Catchment Collective. This is an awesome group, or series of groups that work in, around and farm across 3 catchments. In that area you can see on the map that they're alone there's 15 sub-catchments and groups, and they all sort of meld together and have this overall catchment collective. So they've been doing a lot of work in managing that biosecurity sort of on-farm management. Biosecurity always features in their top areas of concern. Very quickly, the Mangatangi Maramarua group, halfway between Hunua Range and the Firth of Thames, just typical catchment group, and they're really engaged in this New Zealand FAP Farm Assurance Program. And that's all about, if you're into the Plus program, that means you got 10% extra on top of your product prices that you can get. So it's definitely worth investing in biosecurity. Won't talk too much about this guy, except Stu Kneebone. He's a top bloke. Any regional council will be lucky to have him as a councillor. His main point is he doesn't see why biosecurity can't be part of a farm environmental plan, just another chapter. The focus has always been on nitrogen management, runoff and sedimentation, but biosecurity is equally important. So just a key message from me to finish up. Pests and weeds know no boundaries. You've got a mix of the old foes and new ones coming in. I guess the message imparting for you guys is, help create the urgency for farmers to do more to manage their on-farm biosecurity. And biosecurity begins at the farm gate, and the vice is always to treat your property like a country's border. Thank you.